They say eating before sleeping can cause bad dreams, so keep a nightlight handy. We're taking a quick peek at Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares is a physics puzzle platform game not all that dissimilar from Playdead's projects such as Limbo and Inside. The game uses a lot of ideas from those titles, including a 2.5D camera, dark surroundings, environmental storytelling, and an endless need to move to the right. Developed by Tasier Studios and published by Bandai Namco of all things, Little Nightmares seems to be the first fully original project the studio has worked on. Tasier has some experience in the past, having worked on projects like Ragdoll Kung Fu Fists of Plastic, Tearaway Unfolded, as well as many of the Little Big Planet titles. The company has also branched out into VR, but for the most part, Tasier seems to have previously worked with other developers instead of on their own. Included in their project list on their website is a title called The City of Metronome. While Tasier was unable to secure funding for that project, many aspects and character design from its concept art bear a striking resemblance to Little Nightmares. The first thing to note with Little Nightmares is its strong art design. While the game never goes fully cartoony, everything and everyone are very much stylized, giving even the well-lit and fancier areas of the game a dark and foreboding feel. Areas ooze with atmosphere, and sometimes with some kind of black tar substance that I don't really want to know what it is. The game somehow manages to be both bright and colorful while also being dark and dingy at the same time, with an overall worn-out feel to everything as if it's been around for many years. This, combined with the game's ominous soundtrack that's never too in your face nor too far into the background, really brings to life the creepiness the devs were going for. Something Little Nightmares is able to sell extremely well is its sense of scale. The main character of the game is only a little larger than a rat, running around in a maze full of giants eager to put an end to your short life. I'm unsure if the main character is supposed to be the size of a normal human while everyone else is giant, or if it's the other way around. You aren't the only pint-sized creature scurrying around in the dark, but you are the closest thing to looking human in the game. Size really does matter for Little Nightmares, as it's weaved into the game so much it might as well be a core mechanic. The gameplay loop consists of constantly outsmarting and outmaneuvering large humanoid creatures using your small size to do so. Ducking and sliding into cracks and crevices while staying hidden in the shadows are keys to staying alive, and everything can kill you in one go. Unlike Playdead's titles, Little Nightmares breaks out into the third dimension a bit by giving its rooms depth, allowing chases to be a bit more interesting. Some sequences go an extra step by giving more context to being captured, such as the chef who will throw you in a pot of soup, or buffet goers devouring you whole. It's not much, but it makes a lot more sense than an enemy that just grabs you and that's it. Considering how determined the protagonist is to stay alive, I find it hard to believe they would just give up and try not to escape after only being captured instead of being killed. Dave Mervick, senior narrative designer at Tasier Studios, explained in a blog on PlayStation's website that Little Nightmares originated from a prototype built in 2012. Called Dollhouse, the prototype allowed players to explore a cylindrical building, being mostly an experiment for camera movement. Over time, the prototype was expanded upon, being mixed with concept artwork of an expansive organic sea vessel called the Maul. This vessel was filled with grotesque monsters used to represent greed and consumption as the player took control of a little girl named Six, who was trapped within the nightmare. In 2015, the game was revealed to the public using the name Hunger, a name that would later be changed to Little Nightmares as the developers were afraid people would be unable to find their project simply by searching for Hunger Game, due to the large Hunger Games franchise. With the name change, however, it's unclear if the story has stayed exactly the same or not, since none of this information is presented within the full release itself. The most I was able to figure out while playing Little Nightmares was that it took place on a ship, and just about everything wanted to kill me. Nothing is ever given a name, nor is there any explanation as to what the facility is, nor why you're there in the first place. The obvious overtones of greed and consumption are still there, but everything is left a bit too vague for my tastes. I can understand the developers wanting players to connect the story pieces together themselves, but from what I've played of the game, there aren't really any pieces to connect. The biggest letdown in Little Nightmares for me is how the game handles its puzzle design. While players can move the camera to look ahead of them, the game heavily relies on trial and error. It doesn't do a fantastic job of telling you what to do or where to go, and it's rather frustrating to try and figure that out while also dodging insta-kill enemies. Little Nightmares has a bit of a parkour system in order to get around your surroundings, but it's very limited. Climbing, grabbing, jumping, swinging, and sliding are really all you've got to work with to traverse your surroundings, but it's never fully clear what you can and can't climb on. In order to fit with the game's thematic design, normal climbable objects just look like normal environmental objects. Things like drawers, cages, cabinets, chains, and even sausage are used to get around the environment, but objects that don't actually lead anywhere still let you climb them. Something like a series of drawers will let you hang onto the handle, giving the impression that they are a direction you can go in, only for players to realize later that they can't lift themselves up any higher. While these situations only take a second or two to figure out, that second or two could mean life or death due to instant kills. While I was able to slip out of the enemy's grasp a few times, these things have a tendency of catching me off guard. The reason behind these red herrings and dead ends, I think, is because enemies are generally easy to avoid otherwise. Few of them are quick enough to catch up with you while you're sprinting, and while sprinting is limited, I only ever ran out of it once in my playthrough of the game. Twisting and turning around corners as well as sliding under tables can make some sections a breeze as long as you know where you're supposed to go. Otherwise, it can be a long slog of constant deaths trying to figure things out. Thankfully, Little Nightmares has a pretty decent checkpoint system that are never too far away from a nearby threat. Something I really liked about the game is how it doesn't do a whole lot to tell you how to play. Usually, I appreciate games having tutorials for in-depth mechanics, but Little Nightmares doesn't really have any in-depth mechanics to teach. Movement is rather basic and something I was able to pick up on moving around in the first few rooms. Many modern games have a tendency to over-tutorialize with text popping up on the screen or some character buzzing instructions in your ear. But Tasier opted to teach by level design, having text few and far between. Usually, when text did show up to tell me some of the controls, it was after I had already figured out and done what it was telling me to do. Little Nightmares also has a few collectibles to find while fumbling around in the dark. Every now and then there's a candle that can be lit, a porcelain doll that can be smashed, or a weird little creature with a paper hat on that can be hugged. These small creatures are prevalent throughout the game, but most of them run from everything. Only a select few can be cornered and hugged, which is a nice reprieve from the surrounding madness. They'll even start copying your movements afterward, which is adorable. The game seems to save during these particular interactions, meaning you won't have to redo them if you end up dying in the near future. Saving does make me think that they're connected to the game's unlockables, but honestly, I'm not entirely sure. The only thing to unlock is concept art in the extras menu. It's not an amazing reward, but it's better than some games that give you absolutely nothing. There's also a level select option, so players can return to any of the 5 levels in search of more of these interactions, although nothing seems to say how many of them have been found, nor how many of them are in each area overall. Little Nightmares is a rather short game, there's no real way around it. It took me less than 3 hours to get through the whole thing the first time, and honestly, even that felt a bit long. I'm not a big fan of the trial and error style of gameplay, and I found myself annoyed and mostly flat out bored about halfway through the game. There are a lot of interesting set pieces and events that take place, but any reaction I had to these set pieces the first time I saw them was quickly diminished the second or third time I went by. While you can utilize the camera in order to get a better view of your surroundings, you can't see all that far ahead of you, so unless you've played the game before and know what's coming up, you're probably gonna die a few times unexpectedly. While the game is dark in both atmosphere and tone, I can't really say that it's all that scary. Creepy, yes, but I never found myself all that frightened. For myself, that's a good thing, since most games these days tend to rely on cheap jump scares in order to get a reaction out of their audience, and I despise jump scares. Due to this, it's not a game with much replayability, but then again, no one should really expect it to be with the kind of game that it is. It reminded me a bit of how I felt playing through the original Outlast and dealing with its chase sequences and quick deaths. There's only so much players can really take of that kind of thing before becoming blind to the atmosphere due to the annoyance of repetitive gameplay. Considering how short the game is, this is a big mark against it in my book. The game's puzzles are so simple I can hardly even call them puzzles, as they're mostly just taking one thing to another thing, and that's about it. Overall, I'm not really sure how to feel about Little Nightmares. I really enjoyed the game's art design and atmosphere throughout my time with it. I'm not usually one to care much about story, but with how the game was designed, I would have expected a lot more on that front from this game. Whatever little story there is rather predictable and presented without much context. Visuals can only take a project so far, and while the game did a good job with scale, I found many environments to be similar, such as the ridiculous amount of bathrooms. There are just so many bathrooms in this game. Most games don't have much to any of them at all, but bathrooms and toilet paper litter every part of Little Nightmares. The game is available on both GOG and Steam for $19.99, with its soundtrack priced at $4.99 if that's something that you enjoy. If you're interested in experiencing a game with some fantastic atmosphere and can get past some repetitive gameplay, I'd say give the game a shot. Otherwise, I found Little Nightmares to come up short. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think about the game or this video in the comment section. I've been Mega Pie Man, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more quick peeks? Click on the video on the left for Steam Rails to Riches, a digital board game about building a railroad empire. Or click on the video on the right to take a look at Snake Pass, a 3D puzzle game with a lot of character.